Hello, welcome to a live version of Education Transformation, which is a podcast we host on the Alexandra McCare YouTube channel, which you can find at ALIMAC, AliMac 0612. What we are testing a different platform today because like every always meaningful education learning journey, we are constantly trying new strategies and methods to improve ourselves and analyzing how things go and using that information to move forward. And so this podcast is like all things in my life. I am trying something new. I want to talk about assessment. This is a very big piece of the puzzle in education, and it is a puzzle. Assessment for a lot of people brings up unpleasant emotions like anxiety, even dread, nervousness. We may even feel those kinds of feelings from childhood experiences with assessment and not even understand that that's where they're coming from. But that is a topic for another day. Today, I just want to ignite some thought around how education currently views and practices assessment and some suggestions for other ways. In academia, I think we would all generally agree on about 6 different kinds of assessment, which all fall into one of 3 categories, which is assessment of learning, basically after the fact, assessment for learning, determining whether or not students are understanding in the learning in the process, and assessment as learning, which is when the assessment is relevant and meaningful to the actual tasks and it is happening in real time. So if you're a homeschooling, you're a homeschooling parent or teacher or micro school teacher or any kind of educator, I just want to encourage us all to reframe how we view assessment. And I guess I'm omitting traditional education in that statement, primarily because I understand the constraints of traditional curriculum. I was just reading a Harvard study yesterday of 30,000 civics teachers who reported their inability to incorporate current events into their curriculum, despite the fact that they saw the value in it and the engagement and the collaborative nature of it with their students, because the standardized curriculum and the required assessments were dictating all of their instructional time. So, anyway, a little side note from that, but the point is we should be all asking ourselves, what is the purpose of the assessment, right? And what we should be trying to impart to young humans is the value of assessment, because assessment should be a tool that helps us grow and learn. And in the Always Meaningful Education model, it is used for that purpose. Through the process of the Always Meaningful Education model, we start with curiosity, and we take that curiosity through a process of creation as we are inputting all different kinds of content, skills, and attitudes about that curiosity that drove us. And then we are creating things, and we're getting a lot of feedback from each other and for ourselves. And we take that creation through a process where we enter into the output phase, and we create something to contribute outside of ourselves, where we get to apply this learning that we have undergone in the input phase of this learning journey, ignited by curiosity. So all along the way, there is assessment of the learning and for the learning and as the learning, but it is being imparted to the student so that they are understanding the value of it and using it. And therefore, the data is always relevant and meaningful. And what I have found with students in AME is that when they understand how to use data, they are happy to collect it. They're happy to analyze it. We like to use the ClassDojo platform because we can select the criteria that we want to measure on any given learning journey. But what's happening in traditional schools is that these norm reference tests, which is comparing kids to each other at that age and grade, and criterion reference tests, which are these assessments of how well, where is the student between perfection and their score, right? 70% close to 30% away from perfection kind of assessments based on the curriculum and the standards. And the students don't understand the value of that. Many of them do not understand the value of that. I'll give you two examples. Recently, I was visiting a hybrid school where one of the AIM students witnessed a peer in his classroom break down in tears when she received back a test score. And when I pressed him to understand what was done about that information regarding the other adults in this child's environment, I was told nothing, that he said nothing was done. She was just kind of left to calm herself down and get back into the program. And he is a newly turned 6-year-old. So this peer of his may have been 5 or 6 years old. Another student in 11th grade, who is a former student of mine, often confides in me about the pressure of assessment. She deals with perfectionism, which has been inculcated in her from this competitive nature of our assessment system in traditional school. Anyway, she was telling me how their school was getting ready to be assessed by a body that evaluates and rates the school, and they were trying to target things sent to them on some sort of checklist, and they saw a gap in creativity. So they quick threw a 2-week project on the kids where creativity was supposed to be the focus, so that they could get these student examples displayed or in some kind of a portfolio, so that when the assessing body came, they could say, oh yeah, this school did something with creativity. This is the kind of stuff that's happening in traditional school. Kids are feeling really anxious and nervous and having cortisol kind of reactions to assessments, and nobody's helping them regulate their emotions or understand the value, how to use the assessment as a tool. And then there are older students who can really see the big picture and understand that things like this 2-week project was a burden imposed on them, not really to give them any valuable feedback, but to check the box for an evaluating body outside of the school. Those things are not helping students, and if we assessment can be helpful. It is helpful. I love assessment. I am constantly evaluating myself and measuring myself against my previous self. And when students understand that, and when we teach them the neuroscience about how their brain learns, they get excited about actually testing strategies. I've been in my coaching and homeschool sort of tutoring, I've been teaching kids this Mind Palace strategy, and everybody is really loving it and using it to help them remember things for their traditional school programs and finding it to be really useful. It's like they get it. They understand the peaks and the valleys of the brain. They understand setting time restraints on your inputting so that your brain can really retain things optimally. They understand how movement and hydration impact their ability to focus and retain, and the emotional connection that really aligns them when they are actively engaging in some sort of learning. When they understand these things, then they want to test them and see how they perform. And when they understand that there are multiple ways at assessing things and analyzing your effectiveness and analyzing efficiency, they want to test those things out and measure themselves and how they do. And sometimes they even have meaningful, valuable competition when they want to measure themselves against each other for some collective endeavor. So, education transformation, how are we able to start to shift education towards meaningful assessment that helps the student say, where am I? Where do I want to go? The kind of assessment that allows the student to start to reflect on themselves and their strategies and identify methods and strategies that help them uniquely progress. The kind of assessment that when we want to measure ourselves against each other in a healthy, competitive way, when we want to be grandmasters in chess, or we want to compete in some mathathon because we are passionate and love math, we understand the value of how to use those kinds of diagnostic tools to improve ourselves. We have to allow students to be active participants. So homeschoolers, if you're listening to me, microschoolers, you guys have much more freedom. We want young humans to take ownership over identifying important things to track and measure, how to look at it once they've collected some data, how to use that data to drive future decisions about their progress. And we, as the learning facilitators, which is a term I embrace in the Always Meaningful Education model, I don't feel that we are teachers, and we are teachers, yes, but teacher has such an old, antiquated association with it, where it's very didactic and me delivering knowledge to someone else. But I don't believe teachers are the holders of the knowledge anymore. Let's face it. There's a wealth of knowledge at our fingertips that we could never, well, I don't want to say that. I don't like to put limits on us as humans, but there's so much more knowledge available to us by experts who have dedicated their lives. We can access them at our fingertips. So we're moving away from this idea of the teacher as the person holding and imparting the knowledge, and the teacher is now a learning facilitator who's also a master learner. So we are constantly measuring and assessing ourselves as adult humans, and then we are facilitating young humans in that process, and we can share with them our strategies and our success, and model that for them as well, while inviting them to explore their own strategies and measure themselves and make decisions about their own progress. And we help them make those decisions. We are really using a lot of AI right now to help students who are, especially those who are in hybrid programs that are using curriculum, or those who are in a micro school that want to follow a curriculum. It's possible. I am of the mindset that we don't use a curriculum in advance, but rather we go through a learning journey that's integrated meaningfully through all of the content lenses born from the curiosity and interests of the participants in that learning journey. And then at the end of that, we can reflect back and look at what skills did we develop, and at what level do we feel we've developed ourselves in those skills, so we can use that information. Having said that, those people who are in a traditional curriculum, AI is an amazing tool that can help us navigate that. So whatever assessment tool you're using, you can actually put that into AI, and then in a more reflective way, we would call these assessments ipsative. You can put in real life assessment for learning, examples, student reflections, interviews, etc. And then you can have the AI analyze with you that work and identify what skills you developed. Then you can plug them in to whatever curriculum you're using, and then see where you have still room for instruction, practice, and progress. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this little mini live podcast on assessment. Thank you for joining Education Transformation. If you are inspired to help shift education so that all learners can develop themselves, understand themselves, and see how they can contribute to the world, then please check us out on YouTube at AliMag0612. Also Alexandra Sorensen-McCare on LinkedIn, and Always Meaningful Education here on Facebook. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.